In 2007, I moved up to New York. It's one of the best and worst experiences of my life. The hard part was my schedule, working a split shift for one job and then moved to a full-time overnight slot for another. I was tired, which made everything difficult to deal with. And it's no secret that New York is not a fluffy, make your heart warm kind of place. So that was hard too. But on my days off, I had the city as my playground. Hop on a subway and you could experience anything. The other blessing was the people. Church of Park Slope in Brooklyn brought some incredible people into my life, and they are the reason I stayed sane. I'm incredibly grateful for those relationships. Creatively, they all inspired me. Actors, comedians, filmmakers, musicians, animators, we had one of everything at church. Fortunately, one of my closest friends was in Atlanta to photograph a wedding. I took advantage of this and was able to get our conversation on camera. Greg Gilbert is a husband, a father, photographer, illustrator, and has a
Master of Divinity in Greek and Hebrew from Bethel Seminary in St. Paul, Minnesota. A Master of Arts in Bible and Ancient Semitic Language from Jewish Theological Seminary in Manhattan. 2 years of clinical pastoral education, which is training in chaplaincy in Brooklyn, New York Methodist Hospital. But my undergrad is in visual arts from the University of Wisconsin at Stevens Point.
Yeah, I wasn't going to say all that. Check out my conversation with Greg Gilbert. Or tell about all the different ventures of art that you are into, because you don't do just one thing. You just kind of dabble in many things.
Yeah, kind of the jack of all trades curse, and I'm not really a jack of all trades. I'm a jack of about 3 trades, which would be photography, sculpture, and ink drawing. And with the ink drawing, I do comics, but also kind of abstract ink work with texts, but mostly comics these days. And my sculpture work, I like to do assemblage pieces, creating little rooms that ultimately are meant to be photographed and experienced through a photo. But what I do the most of are little tree sculptures, which to date I've made about 160 of or so, from 1 inches tall to about 8 feet tall. The 8-foot one is part of a private collection in Manhattan, which I'm very happy about. And a lot of the smaller ones, friends have, family, and I do get commissioned to do those as well.
What made you want to do trees, and where kind of the inspiration come from that?
So there's actually a pretty straight answer for that. I was finishing up my master's at Jewish Theological Seminary, and I had a class called Art, Iconography, and Archaeology of Ancient Israel. And we had to pick a topic to do a presentation on, a 45-minute presentation and a 20-page paper. And got to class one day and found out that was, in fact, the day we had to give an answer for what we were doing. And so I just said, how about, I said Tree of Life. Could I do Tree of Life imagery? And our professor, Dr. Geller, said, well, we're going to talk about that in class, so it has to be something different. But if you wanted to, you could do sacred tree imagery as a more general sense of sacred trees. So I jumped on that. And for my final paper and presentation, I researched sacred tree imagery from ancient Israel and the ancient Near East. And the whole time I was writing the paper, I thought, you know what? I'd much rather be making trees than writing about them and reading about them. And I was in an artist residency program at Jewish Theological, which I'm still a part of, with my wife Sophia. And Toby Kahn, who runs it, was very encouraging, and I started making the trees not too long after I finished that paper later that year. And kind of just went from there. I started out making one tree, and then another, and then a couple more, and all of a sudden I'd made 9 or 10, and then I decided to make 100 of them. So I did a series of 100 trees, and then after that I started to do another series. That was my Sacred Tree series, of which I did 100, and then I started another kind of, indefinite, that's what I'm called, the indefinite tree series. So I just keep making them with sequential numbers, and I've made a Tree of Life tree and a couple family trees that include photos of family members, and also some wedding trees which have wires in them that start separate at the trunk and then join together in the top part of the tree.
I think my favorite type of art that you do is, it's a picture, but it's comprised of words, tiny words done in ink.
I like to use text as texture, so it's text that's not meant to be read necessarily. but it actually starts to create a texture itself. And those words can take shape. Actually, the first time I did it was in college in a life drawing class, drawing live models, and I decided to draw just using script. And so I drew this whole it's kind of from like this height down to waist level, just using text and a couple lines to help guide that text. And I really enjoyed that. It was interesting how much depth you can get just writing with words. So I started to do that in my ink drawings as a way of almost just sort of train of thought, just writing whatever came to my mind, but maybe thoughts that I didn't necessarily want to share, almost like a private journal that's in sight. So the words are all words, but they're drawn in a way that you can't read them, and they're meant just to appear as texture, even though I am talking about things that might be important to me, or it might just be what I'm thinking at that time. Or in the largest drawing I've done like that, I was starting to get really sick of the drawing, so I was literally writing, I hate this drawing, I hate this drawing.
Just what got you into drawing in the first place? Like, had you been doing that since you were a kid? Or?
Well, kind of my progression for artwork, when I was in grade school, I liked to draw cartoons, I liked to draw Garfield, and made up a couple of my own little characters who didn't do a whole lot other than just sit there. And but I liked art, and then when we'd go on family trips, and my parents were really great about taking us on these long vacations, driving vacations, and when they were taking pictures, and they let me take pictures now and then, but I really wanted to be taking pictures of whatever we were seeing. And so when I got to high school, my junior year, I took a photography class, and I really loved that. You do your own printing, processing, all that stuff. I really loved it. And then I did a year-long class my senior year of high school, and I was going to major in theater, which I'd done all through high school, but decided to do photography. And as it happened, I went to University of Wisconsin-Stevens Point, where you would major in art, but then emphasize in a given medium. And I emphasized in photography. But college was kind of a struggle for me because I really only knew how to do photography, not much other artwork. But this was an art degree where my emphasis was photography. So it took me a while. I was very uncomfortable at first and just kind of didn't know what I was doing. I felt like I was surrounded by brilliant artists, and I just wasn't very good at anything. I didn't even get to take photography until the second semester. And once I was taking it again, that was great to kind of feel like, okay, I have photography, and I'm going to get along with this other stuff.
Every once in a while, something will happen to you in real life, and whether it's frustrating or just something funny that happened, and you like to make little comic strips out of those.
True.
Any plans of publishing?
Hey, I'd love to publish.
Get a Kickstarter going.
Yeah, I do a lot of comics. They're almost entirely based off of real life things that happen. Usually things that are funny. Sometimes tragedy is much funnier when made into comic form.
Yeah.
I think it was Mel Brooks who said, when I get a hangnail is a tragedy. When I fall into an open sewer and die is comedy. I think that was him. I could be quoting him wrong, but
I think you're right.
Yeah. And I agree with that. I've always thought it's funny when I get hurt or fall off of something or bump my head or whatever. Not funny when it happens to anyone else, but if it happens to myself, once I get over the pain, or even while I'm still getting over the pain, I'm entertained by it. And that's the kind of thing that I like to draw in my comics. Even as a way to get a laugh out of something. Like over the past years, I've had some rough patches, just, feeling like, what am I doing with my life, like everyone does. And I drew a comic, must have been last year while I was still working at American Express. And the first panel was the sun just shining brightly with a big smile. And then the second panel, the sun is looking at me with still the sun with the big smile, and I'm walking by with my shoulders slumped over and bags under my eyes looking sad. And then the last panel is the sun, and all of its sun rays are melted down, and they're just black and dripping. And the sun has this very tragic look on its face. And I'll tell you, I drew that out of misery, but I've laughed more at that comic. And it's cheered me up more times than any of my other comics I've drawn, I think. I really think humor is really a gift, and it can be really a blessing. And so I think that using humor in a way that is encouraging to people and helpful can be a lot of fun and can be a healing process. And so that's how I view my comic work, as a way to be in touch with reality, but also a way to enjoy it too when something happens, and see the lighter side of it when it's possible and appropriate too.
Thanks for watching. Next week, I'll be posting some footage from my holidays so far, so like and subscribe, and may the force be with you.